Welcome to the Thriving Musician Podcast, hosted by certified financial planner Spencer List. Tune in to hear inspiring stories from music professionals on their journey to financial independence. Plus, gain valuable insights from industry experts on how to level up your finances, career, and life. Here's your host, Spencer List.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Thriving Musician Podcast. Today I have a very special guest in Austin Breckenridge. He's the co-founder and executive director of the A&R Foundation. He's born in San Jose, California, where he began his music career at 17, booking live events in the San Francisco Bay Area. In 2010, he founded Nemesis Media, an independent label focused on emerging Bay Area artists. Under his leadership, the label released 10 albums, produced 2 local festivals, and expanded to Austin, Texas in 2012, where he served as CEO until its successful exit in 2015. Over his 17-year career, Austin has worked as an artist manager, tour manager, business manager, and event producer. In 2015, he began his career in finance, holding roles in small business banking, commercial banking, community development, and business advising across Texas. His diverse background in music, finance, and entrepreneurship allows him to bridge creative and analytical business approaches. Welcome, Austin.
Hey, Spencer, thank you so much.
I'm so glad you're here. We connected in the last couple months, but I think I've known about your foundation for about a year now. And I know that it's in the works, but you're doing things. Give me a little bit of background on how you came to start a nonprofit, and then tell me what is the A&R Foundation and how people can get involved and what they can get from it.
Yeah, no, of course. It's a pretty unconventional story, to be honest with you. We spent a lot of time in music, kind of like the bio said. I started it at 17. My first kind of shot at business and being in the music industry was actually a high school business project that just never ended. I needed to come up with a plan and a marketing plan and a business plan for this senior project I've been working on. And I accidentally fell into music, to be quite honest with you. I had played baseball almost my whole life. I was a pitcher, and then going into my senior year, blew my rotator cuff in any shot at like professional baseball, to be honest with you. And I had fallen into film and photography as kind of a hobby. I was doing it as part of an elective class, and was out shooting a friend's band one day, doing a photo shoot for him as a freebie, and we got to talking about them just releasing some new music. They got this brand new EP they just put out, and back then, when CDs were a real hot commodity, they tend to order them in bulk, right? It was always get the 1,000 CDs, get them for less than $1, right?
Yeah.
Sounds like a great deal.
Yeah.
No one tells anyone that if you can't sell the product, it's just as bad as paying too much for it, if not worse.
Yeah.
And so he was talking to me about how they couldn't sell these CDs that they had. And I said, not for nothing, and I don't know much, but some of these concepts I learned in this marketing class, what if you tried this? And he came back to me about a month later and said, hey, we took your advice and we sold through like 300 more of these CDs. What do you think about being our band manager? And I just blank-faced him for probably a minute and said, first thing about being a band manager, but I just put my rotator cuff. I got nothing else going on. Why not? And I went home that day and Google University to what a band manager does. And one of the first things it said, you go and you get them work, you book them gigs. About a week later, I had a show booked, a hole-in-the-wall bar in downtown San Jose called Johnny V's on a Sunday night that I wasn't even old enough to get into at the time. And, we were off to the races and just kind of learned as I went about the industry and how it worked. And that one gig eventually turned into being the in-house booker for Sunday nights and heavy metal at Johnny V's for a number of years. And from that was born a production company that we ran. And as I started getting further and further into how music worked and how musicians were treated, I found that the traditional industry, the labels and artist managers didn't always treat artists fairly. And we felt like we could do something different. And we started a record label on a whim. Just one day said, we're going to do it. No formal training, no formal business degree, no anything other than learning through doing. And from there, it grew. We ran it the next 10 years. It was pretty great. We were able to manage artists, put them on tour, bring some artists in from overseas for their first US tours. And I'm not going to say it was glamorous the whole time. There is the whole drug, sex, and rock and roll thing. And that does absolutely happen on the road. Don't get me wrong. But most of it is sleeping in Walmart parking lots, Motel 6s, and figuring out where your next meal is going to come from so you get paid that night. And we learned a lot of things the hard way. But from that, we grew it, expanded the company out into Austin back in 2012, and then in 2015, life kind of took over. Decided that got married, wanted to settle down, wanted to have children. Being on the road 6 to 8 months out of the year just isn't the way to raise a family, to be honest. And we tried to get out of it. And I say try because we made it about 6 months before we kind of figured out we could try and get out of it, but music never really lets you go. Right. And we were still talking to the same people. We were still getting advice. We were kind of sitting there and going, we're doing all this for free. Maybe we dip our toes. And this idea of the A&R agency came to fruition, which was kind of an artist management in an a la carte format. We realized through our time working with different artists at different levels, not every artist needed a manager, let alone everything the manager offered. They might have needed certain pieces. Maybe they needed a business manager more than they needed a personal manager, right? Or a professional manager. They needed a tour manager. And so we parted it out and we operated that for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And it went really, really well. But we always hit financial barriers with artists in the sense that they loved the work. They loved working with us. There was only so much money to go around. And that had always been a problem, even when we were running the record label. Some of the biggest arguments you have with artists when you're the head of a label is where you put the money, right? Because as a record label owner, you want to take into account that you want to take care of your artists, but you also have a business to run. And where you put those dollars, and if those dollars don't come back, there's no more label, there's no more helping. We understand that as business people and entrepreneurs, it's hard for the creative mind to wrap itself around that. 9 times out of 10, it's, oh, you're doing this because you want to do me dirty. No, I'm doing this because if I don't, there's not going to be any money to help you at all, right? And so we were out having sushi one day, one of our favorite sushi places in Austin, myself and my two co-founders, Robert and Jeremy, and we were talking through this wall we were hitting of like, well, we can't get them to return because if given the choice between putting the money into coaching that they know is valuable or shooting the music video, they're going to go shoot the music video. Even though they know there's not going to be enough money left to do anything with that video, they still want to, and you can't blame the creative mind for wanting to do that. That's the fun thing to do. And it was actually Robert who came up with it. He goes, well, what if we went nonprofit and removed the barrier altogether? And I'll be honest, Jeremy and I almost laughed to have that sushi restaurant because we had never, one, considered it. Two, I'd never seen management or coaching or any of the combination be done, let alone qualify in a nonprofit format. It's not pretty easy to get a 501c3 designation, and that is mainly the point of going that way. But we said, let's give it a shot. Maybe you got something, and that led to about 3 months of research and talking to lawyers and going, are we nuts? And the answer was, you're not nuts, but it's different. It's unique. You're really gonna have to explain that story on that application to make it make sense. And 2 months later, that's what we did, and we were blessed enough to get that designation, and we went through an accelerator that helped us piece it all together and learn how to run a nonprofit in that format. Because we come from the for-profit world, I could talk shareholder value and return on dividends and everything all day long. Learning how to storytell and convey community impact as the currency versus shareholder value was something very new to all of us. And that's where we went. We started building our board of directors, and 2 years later, we've been able to launch our pilot and work with a ton of great creatives here in the Austin area, and hoping to expand upon that over the next year. So that's kind of the long-winded piece of how we started early on, just a kid in high school who was looking to do something new and knew I wanted to help people, and discovered a skill set that allowed us to do that. If you would have asked me a decade ago if we'd end up as a nonprofit, I probably would have still laughed you out of the room. It wasn't even a thought in my mind. But when you think about the core of why we do what we do, it's to help people live out their creative dreams, but help them do it in a way that allows them to be sustained. because I don't really believe there's a right or a wrong way necessarily. I think everyone has their own way of doing things, but there's definitely planning and making calculated risk decisions and simply jumping off the cliff before you figured out how deep the water is below you. And we like to give all the information possible to help them make that decision. Is it the right time to jump? Do we maybe need to have some padding? Should we walk down to the cliff and see if the water is actually deep enough first? So yeah.
Absolutely. This is fantastic. So tell us a little bit more about how the foundation works and like who who is it for? Like what stage in life do they need to be? Obviously it's a nonprofit, so how does that work financially for the people you're helping, but then also, for them to understand how it works, like they just show up and say, "Hey, I need help." But then also, what are all the different things you're helping them with? And we'll start there, and then I've got some more questions.
Yeah, no, great questions. So, our mission at the NR Foundation is to help turn creative passions into sustainable businesses, and we primarily target independent musicians and independent creative businesses. And so, those that are typically music centric will work with most of the creative community because I think there's a lot of value in that, and the whole community is underserved,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of breaking down individual silos. But a lot of folks that we work with are independent musicians, producers, venue owners, um, photography companies, film, kind of that whole ecosystem. And so we really work with people that are at any stage, but the requirements that we're looking for is that they want to do it full time and they want to do it. So they may
Okay.
not be there yet. Maybe they are and they need some help because things are tough. I find we get a lot of people kind of in the middle. They've been doing it a little while, maybe not quote unquote seriously, or they haven't filed a business or they don't have a business bank account. That's kind of our sweet spot. And it allows us to get in there and go, okay, you have something. Creatively, you found something. Now you're trying to find a way to monetize it and create sustainability so that you can do it full time. And so, really, anyone that has the willingness to work, the willingness to show up and put the work in, qualifies for what we're doing. And is in the creative arts. It's really where we want to hone in
Yeah.
and focus. As far as what we offer them, we variety of things. One, a lot of it is entrepreneurial education and really understanding the business side of what they do. Because all these years in the music industry, if I've learned anything at all, again, that creative mind doesn't first and foremost go to business. It doesn't go to what a lot of people call the boring stuff. I nerd out on spreadsheets. So does Robert. Jeremy, not so much, but he understands it, but not everybody does. And so being able to understand how the two can work in tandem to create something that allows you to keep doing what you love if you want to do it for money. And, there is, I think, a point in time for everyone where you decide, maybe I love doing this, but I don't love having to focus on monetizing it because it takes away from my ability to be creative.
Yep.
A decision has to be made there, and there's no right or wrong, and we're not here to make that decision for people. But if I can help guide someone to that and they came to that of their own conclusion through our coaching, through our events and programs, and it helped them make that decision now before they went and put themselves $50,000, $100,000 in debt on something that
Yeah.
then they realize, maybe this isn't it. I think that's a win for us all around because that person still gets to have their creative passion and their love for what they do. And they found another way to monetize and pay their bills. And I think it's perfectly.
Yeah.
For everyone else who wants to do it full time, you got to have a plan and you have to put some structure to it. And sometimes that doesn't feel fun, but we have found success in taking the time to put that all together and understand how your relationship with money, not only on the personal side, but on the business side, doesn't have to be this big boring thing. It doesn't have to be this scary thing. It can actually be a really exciting thing. Going back to the spreadsheets, looking at an empty template of financial projections is intimidating and it is boring and it doesn't make any sense if nothing's in there. You'd be amazed that when you start plugging your real numbers in, hey, how much did you do in merch this week? What did touring do for you this month? How much in taxes did you have to set aside? When they start plugging their real numbers in, it's an awesome moment to see it just click. Oh, I can't afford this right now. Or maybe not yet, but if I sell 10 more shirts a show for the next 6 months, I can get that new piece of equipment, or I can buy that recording equipment and open my studio, and it saves me on recording $30,000, right? And so really what we're trying to do. Is we're trying to help them understand how to treat it like a business, but it doesn't have to be the suit and tie in the boardroom. It can still be fun. It can still be creative, and that your numbers and how you have a relationship with money is a pretty strong indicator of whether it's sustainable. Because while the money is not the be all end all, it is the lifeblood of the business. And if you're going to run it as a business, you got to make sure that stuff's pumping, that financial heartbeat's going, it's moving things throughout the different parts of the music body, if you will. And quite honestly, I've found that those that have found that financial freedom or as close to it as they want to be tend to be more creative because they're not sitting there figuring out whether they got the money to eat the data. And I'm sure you've experienced that with people that you've worked with. I don't know if I got enough gas to get to the next gig. I don't know if I can pay rent. I don't know if I can eat. If you're worrying about the roof over your head between your stomach around your back, how are you going to create great art, let alone build the relationships with the people that you want to ask money from for your art? Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The benefit of that is you can create great art in the sense that you can write and sing and make songs about your struggle, which is that's one way to think about it,
It
but
is.
that's not the ideal life to live over the long term. So tell me a little more about how if someone reaches out, you say, "Yeah, this is great," and I know it's like you've it's what I would call a soft launch. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you've started doing this. But is it open to the public? And then, if so, and when that becomes public, and someone starts, how long is it? Is it like Zoom calls? Do you cover different topics? Does it just cater to what that person needs? Tell me a little bit more about what it looks like, or what it can look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're coming out of our first official pilot, and we piloted our one-on-one coaching program. Our intent is to open things further to do more regular community-based events, also more online workshops, so that people can access it. Maybe when they're at work or working odd
Yeah,
hours, and we're not available. And so that ends in about 2 weeks.
cool.
All initial indicators tell us that it was extremely successful. I think it far exceeded expectations all around. And so the intention is to allow it to grow from there. As far as fully public facing, we're looking at an early 2025 launch. We're going to take the time, obviously, to bring in all the data that we got, make sure that we've lined up, that the curriculum we have makes sense, get
Mm-hmm.
some of these other events booked that we're working on with our other partners in the area. But essentially, what that would look like is, yeah, we have an intake form that people can fill out. If there's word of mouth and people are sharing, which is how we've gotten a lot of our clientele so far, we direct them back to the website. It gives you plenty of information about us, how we function, who we are, why we think we're, the right people for what we do, and a short intake form that triggers us to reach out and connect and kind of set up that first meeting. We do a lot of stuff virtual. I think that makes a lot of sense for the clientele that we serve. However, we're open to in person if we're local. As we start expanding to other markets within Texas, that'll be our main focus. Is our home state. Right now, we're doing a lot in Austin, but we have had, a lot of inquiries from Houston and Dallas and San Antonio and El Paso, all these other
Mm-hmm.
cities that have fantastic creative communities as well, at varying stages of their careers. And so we're pretty much open to anyone within the state of Texas, primarily virtually. We start with a discovery call, if you will, just to make sure we're in alignment with, hey, this is what we do. I think we do get a lot of folks that come to us thinking we're traditional in the sense that we are going to work on branding and PR and building fan bases. And those are things we can touch on, but there are a lot of resources out there for musicians to do that. What we really want to focus on is your end goal to be able to make a living off of what you do creatively? And if that answer is yes, then we start to talk more about goal setting, business planning, strategic planning, financial strategies, not necessarily planning. That's a territory that you all and a lot of other people cover very well. And we want to make sure that we're the right people on that. But we will talk about how to build a budget, how to plan appropriately for fundraising, how to set yourself up from a business perspective. Separate those buckets. Don't get caught up in that mess to where you start making a good amount of money and it's enough money for the IRS to start getting interested in you. And all of a sudden you can't tell an IRS auditor, well, that meal was for me, or no, we were actually out on tour, because that's one of the worst spots you could possibly be in come tax time is not be able to clearly articulate why that was a meal expense for this, and not you're hanging out with the boys at the club, if you will. And so we focus on a few different topics, and so we want to have that discovery call to make sure that we're talking about, hey, we do focus on business, not that we won't talk marketing, these other things, because that all plays a factor. And then from there, if it's a good fit, we get on a regular schedule. So most people tend to meet with us bi-weekly. Some of them want a little more attention early on, so we'll try to accommodate one-on-ones weekly, with the goal of moving to monthly or quarterly, right? We want to get you set up to where you can run your business and then go on, right? Go do the fun thing. Go be creative. You've got these systems in place. We automated as much as we can to help you out. Let's touch base once a quarter to tweak and clean up and all that other stuff. So we provide that at no cost to the clients. We're really core belief that we don't want that financial barrier to be a reason you don't come get the help of the education. We offset that by going after government funding, public and private donations. We are a full-blown 501c3 public charity, so we have been gifted the opportunity to raise funds in that way. And we're really good about controlling our own costs so that we can maximize the thing we're putting back to what we deliver.
Amazing. So for people who are listening and thinking they would want to get involved, either, there might be people who want to offer, to help with their expertise, or to give, to help support. What are your thoughts there, and what are some ways people can help the foundation?
Yeah, we're always looking for any help we can support, monetary or otherwise, right? It takes a village, right? And all of us are doing this. Our board is 100% volunteer by nature with the nonprofit status. All of us that are working in it right now are foregoing salary as well. So we're all volunteer based. And so we run up against operational and capacity issues, right? As any early stage business would, but especially in the nonprofit world where we're subject to grant cycles. People, depending on the economy, are more generous certain times of the year than others. And so either way, our website, so it's the A&R Foundation, so A, N as in Nancy, R, because for some reason in the digital age, we still can't use an and symbol on a web address. So it's anrfoundation.org. There's a donate page. It's a quick, easy form. So if you want to financially contribute one time, it allows you to do recurring on a monthly basis. If you want to throw a couple bucks, and then our contact form for volunteers is the best way to get involved. Right now we're working on putting a series of events together. So anyone that's got experience in event staffing or putting things together, we're always looking for that help. As we expand publicly, I know we will be looking for coaches to come on so that we can expand our reach, I think, over the next 12 to 18 months. And so anyone that's got an interest in helping artists, that has an understanding of the space, we're always interested in talking to, or any partners, right? I think, like I said, no one organization is going to solve the problem by itself. It's take a community and an ecosystem to do that, and everyone has a core specialty, and being able to trade those contacts and go, you know what, I don't do investments, but I know how you invest your money personally is going to be the difference maker on if you can retire at 60, 65, or if you're going to be touring until you're 90, and maybe you want to, right? But I found most people that are touring into their 80s isn't because they want to, it's because they have to, because the money wasn't managed to be handed away. Yeah. But I know some great people such as yourself that can talk you through that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do I use this money that I've worked so hard to get now that I've figured out how to keep a good chunk of it? Or maybe you need a PR campaign. I'm not great with that. I know a ton of companies that are. Go talk to this person. So everything through our website, we try to centralize things there. We're really quick at responses and getting, connections made. And so that would be the best way to get more information, get involved, donate.
Absolutely. And so during your pilot program, I'm curious, was there anything that stuck out to you as a trend, or anything that you found many of your clients needed help with, or even just their mindset, just anything stick out to you in the initial round?
Oh yeah. A couple of things, but the big one was about the structure and setting up the structure as far as like bookkeeping and things like that. Once we actually got in there and we did it, and we walked through setup, and we taught them how to enter a transaction, and then we showed them how to connect the bank account, how it imports automatically. A lot of them went, that wasn't so hard.
Yep.
I'm so glad we had you guys, because there's no way I would have even started it without the push. but I don't think I need to meet with you every week to do this. I think I can do it, and it makes sense. And like generating those reports for the first time once we got caught up, and that was the heavy lift, of going back 6 to 8 months worth of transactions and doing that. But the realization that they almost, most of them, psych themselves out, right? Which I'll be honest, I did when I first started business too, because I want nothing to do with it. It took me a solid year and a half to realize that not doing good bookkeeping was very detrimental to my production company. But that's the biggest trend that I noticed. And then two, in a very positive light, the willingness to want to learn that piece. A lot of the creative folks, I thought it would be a bit of a lift to guide them towards a business plan or guide them towards financial record keeping. And a lot of them were very receptive to it, or even asked for it before we got there. Hey, I know my creative really, really well. What I don't know is how much money it's making me or costing me. And I know I need to do this in the spreadsheet I'm using to present that. And so we were actually able to get, I'd say 90% of the pilot cohort within the first probably 4 to 5 weeks of the pilot on a bookkeeping system, which I thought was phenomenal as far as an output. And I don't use this word lightly, but very life changing for a lot of them, because they were able to start making, I've had all these products online and they're not selling, but I'm paying for inventory, or I'm paying for extra like items on my e-commerce store to have them, and they're not selling. It's actually hurting me. And then some people, it's like, I really do. And that, it was, I don't have the money for this. And we find that there's, $200 a month in specialty coffee. And it's like, well, what if I told you could make that at home for like 10 cents a cup?
Yeah.
And save yourself $197 a month that could be going towards, paying down debt, so that you're in a better position to leverage maybe business credit in the future. Or, hey, that $15.99 a month to have the accounting software that tracks inventory, you're telling me it's too much. I was like, what if we caught out 3 coffees a week, and you'd have triple that to get the upgraded system. And so those were a lot of them, I think. And a lot of it is, they just don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
The creatives are very smart individuals. I would challenge that they're probably smarter than most people that go the traditional college route and get the degree. And I got nothing against the piece of paper. I think it's awesome. It shows that you put in a lot of work. But the creative mind does amazing things, even in the more traditional business space. It just has to be given the tools and the knowledge to do it, and the support that it's okay to think that way. It's okay to treat yourself as a business, and that you can thrive in that environment, with a little bit of help and a little bit of hard work.
What would you say to artists who are taught and then believe that they need someone else to do this for them? In most cases, a business manager, and then they find out that the manager, most managers don't work with you unless you make $300K, because they take a percent, right, to make it worth their while. So they have their salary, and there's this like roadblock. There's this gap between me needing this and then someone being willing to do it for me. But what you just described is an incredibly simple thing to set up, mostly automate, and it's incredibly empowering when you know the information. You can make informed financial decisions. What would you say to someone who thinks and believes, I need someone to do this for me, and if I don't have someone, then I'm just gonna kind of like suffer and struggle through it?
Yeah, I encounter a lot of people like that. Honestly, it's a couple of things. One, give it a shot. Take a step, because you're not losing anything by trying. Worst case scenario, you lose a little bit of time, but as far as where you're at financially with things, there's tons of free tools out there. Wave Accounting, for example, their free tier will suffice for 95% of musicians and creative arts, right? You get into inventory, you might need to upgrade a little bit, but outside of that, you lose a little bit of time. It doesn't cost you anything. And the gain that you have, not only from the confidence level, but financially, to gain control of your insights. Not that managers and labels don't have their place and their function. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to go on those paths. They each have their pros and cons. But I do think we psych ourselves out, and we listen to advice a lot of times from people who haven't actually done much in the industry. I find that advice comes from artist managers who haven't actually like taken an artist to the next level or been a part of a Grammy winning team, if you will, because any one of those teams that you talk to are going to tell you that the first and most important thing is understanding the money. If you can't understand the money, the rest of it doesn't matter. And those managers and those label teams are experts at doing that. But they all started the same exact place that that musician is starting that's thinking they need it. They still had to go to school, some of them. Otherwise, they learned it on their own. And there's so many more free tools. So first and foremost, before you kind of throw the hands up and go, I can't do this without help, go actually try it. You'd be surprised. And then two, get comfortable with the idea of delayed gratification. Because we are a community, especially the creative community, like we're on to that next fix, right? We want that dopamine hit now. And honestly, finance isn't that, maybe if you're day trading and you get real lucky, you'll see some instant wins there. But a lot of times it's a growth pattern, especially for a business. It's going to take a little bit of time. And so have the patience, put a little bit of the hard work in now, and it's going to feel a little rough. But it does. It pays off tenfold in a lot of different ways because those are skills that are not only good for your business, but they're translatable to you personally, right? And then I think financial literacy at the business level and at the consumer level, especially in this country, if not the entire world, is a pandemic in and of itself. I will use that word, right? It is not taught efficiently, and it has the biggest impact on your comfortability in life and your ability to just be happy and not worry about it. And it's not that the money makes you happy, but it's that by having the funds to do what you need to do, you stress a lot less. And the reducing the stress is what allows you to go be happy and do things. And so why deprive yourself of a potential life of happiness, if you will, simply because you don't believe in yourself or you've been taught by someone who may or may not have actually made it. I don't know that I've met someone truly on the higher echelon of the music industry that has ever told anyone that you can't go do things on your own and you have to have someone to do this. Even larger label heads won't say, you don't have to have us. You will move quicker by having us because we've built out this huge team that you now don't have to go source and pay yourself. You're going to give up a lot for it, but you don't have to. And that's that delayed gratification piece is how much are you willing to sacrifice now to build your business so that you control most of it, so that you can reap the benefits of owning your master, owning your publishing, deciding what tour you go on and how you do it, versus being at the whim of someone who's going to have a lot of creative control in their career. Like shelving an album is a real thing. If they don't think it's going to make money, it's going to sit there. And you might love those songs, and you may never get the chance to put those out. That is the trade-off, if you will. And whether we believe that's right or wrong is a whole other discussion, if you will. But that's the trade-off. You want this huge team that you don't have to source yourself or pay. You're going to give up something. Or we can get a little uncomfortable right now. We can learn a few things about the stuff we don't know, and see if we can do it independently. So those would be the two big things. And then I guess the last one, just to throw it on there, because I'd love, because date your numbers. Like a lot of times we psych ourselves out and we get scared of what we don't know. Some of the best things you do is just sit down, maybe with like a half glass of wine, because you don't want to drink too much when you're talking with your bank accounts and your numbers. But take the numbers, get to know each other a little bit, start to understand what they mean to you and how they affect the outcomes that you want to have. And life gets a whole lot simpler. It's not as complicated as everyone makes it sound. I hear this whole well, they said, and they said, like, I really like to meet who they is one day and go, you guys really suck. Because the information that you spread is terrible, because it's not. I've known people that barely graduated high school that once they understand how the bookkeeping works and the systems work, can make key financial decisions about their life and business that surpass the ability of people that I've known that have MBAs. Like it's not as scary. It's not as hard. It is simply just taking the first steps and trusting in yourself. And yes, it is part of knowing who to surround yourself with. There are some not great players in our industry, unfortunately. But that's the power. If you know how to do it yourself, you're not at the whim of someone else. So if you do hire that business manager, you know how to cross-check that they're doing what they're supposed to do before you find out they've been given the top for 15 years and now you got stuck with them. Right? You know enough to be dangerous. Probably a little more than you asked for there.
No,
But it's a pretty passionate piece of mine is financial literacy equals your freedom in a lot of ways to enjoy your life and your art. Um, and you can take a lot of steps on your own. You don't you don't need a whole lot of people. You need some work ethic and some trust in yourself at the end
Very
of the
well
day.
said. Very well said. And a couple things on that. I mean, all successful businesses, the path to that is you do it yourself, at least to the point where you know enough that when you do decide to delegate, like you said, you can cross check. I have yet to come across someone who runs a successful business that doesn't understand every aspect of their business. They might not know it at the highest level. They may not be experts in that field, but they know the system that they want and that's right for them. Then they delegate it and they tell the expert, hey, this is kind of like how I do things. Can you continue to do it this way and then make it better? Right. The other thing you talked about, delayed gratification, I thought of a quote, right, when you said that about like day trading, and I thought, like, please don't do that. But then like that would be instant gratification versus delayed gratification. So to me, instant gratification leads to delayed sadness. So it's like, which way do you want it? And it
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's black and white. Like, you don't, even like with the cups of coffee, like I think that's a great example, but it might not be that. It could be something else that you realize when you think about, when you're evaluating your numbers, you need to evaluate your personal values too, because for some people, that cup of coffee reminds them of, the coffee they used to have with their parents every morning or whatever it is, right? There might be some attachment to that and some real value and joy in their day that comes from it. And there could, or it might not. They might say, you know what? I just have been doing that every day, on autopilot. And yes, I don't think that's really that valuable to me. It could be other things in life that we don't realize we're making financial decisions around subconsciously, that when we bring consciousness to it, we say, I've had this subscription to whatever and I barely use it. Or when I do, I'm kind of depressed and just like on the couch watching Netflix. I don't want to be doing that anymore, right? Like there are the values that we need to align that can then lead us to making those changes in those financial decisions. So very, very well said. I couldn't agree more. So if people, we'll get to how people can get involved. You mentioned it earlier, but before we do that, what would be your definition of a thriving musician?
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about that the whole interview here, and I think for me, it's someone who is able to find fulfillment in their creativity and also be able to sustain the level of lifestyle that they want to sustain from it. That being said, I also think it could be someone who has found the balance between, hey, maybe monetizing this takes all the fun out of it for me.
Yeah.
So I have this other skill set. Maybe I'm really great at graphic design, and I'm going to do that during the day, and I'm going to go play shows at night and on the weekend because that's my release and have fun. But they found balance, and they've allowed themselves to live the lifestyle that they want through whatever means they feel works for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everyone's definition is going to be a little different. I work with clients who want to tour stadiums. That's their definition of success. And I have some that are perfectly content. You know what? I got my 40-hour day job down to like 10 hours a week. And the rest of the time I do music. That's success to me. And I think that's why we try so hard here at the foundation to understand what that means and sometimes flip that mindset that doing your creative passion full time doesn't look like it did 10, 15, 20 years ago, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't. A touring career is a lot harder than most people think to sustain. It's harder to tour. Music makes the least amount of money for you that it's ever made in its history of existence at the moment. And so you might have to leverage other skill sets, and maybe you're great at audio engineering and you record when you're not on the road, or maybe you do
Mm-hmm.
these different things that still allow you to have the creative juices flowing, but allow you to monetize in a way that lets you do the music. And so that would be my expanded definition of a thriving
I
musician
love that.
is whatever it is for them, but at the core, are they happy? Can they be creative? And can they keep a roof over their head, food in their stomach, a shirt on their back? And if there's a family, the family taken care of, that's success. Because there's a lot of people in our industry and outside of it that don't even achieve that piece in their lifetime. And there's a lot of people around the world that don't even get the opportunity to create that for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we're in an exciting time in an exciting country that gives us the room to take those risks and go do those things. So, yeah.
Beautiful. How can listeners learn more about you and or get in touch with you?
Yeah, that anrfoundation.org. I'm going to drive back to that. We're on most of the social media as well, but I think the hub for information is our website. We teach all of our clients that their social media arms should be drawing people back, because that's where everything connects. And so the A&R Foundation, so the A, N as in Nancy, R Foundation.org is going to be the best place. From there, you can parse out to Facebook, Instagram, any of the other ones that you prefer. We keep tabs on all of them, and then our contact form is the best way to get in touch with us. Go right into our email accounts. We usually respond within a business day, if not quicker. And those that are interested in the coaching, will be reopening the application for that here within the next couple of weeks. Though it's still accessible, so if they want to submit now, they'll get an email from us that says, thanks for your interest. We're working on expanding open to the public, but it'll at least get it into the system and get the conversation going for as we open up.
Fantastic.
More publicly.
Thank you so much for sharing this, and I'm looking forward to helping however I can as well. So we're talking about that, and yeah, this was fantastic. I'm looking forward to sending people your way who could use this. I think a lot of people confuse what I do with the business side of things, and as much as yes, technically I can, there are plenty of other people who can do that, and then this is a great amazing nonprofit that can help you with the business side. I help you with your personal finances, so, and those things go hand in hand, right? They're very important to coordinate properly and prioritize properly too, right? There's a lot of people who neglect their personal finances in their lives for their business, and that can be a dangerous thing when in a business that typically it's, an artist who has their business, that's not a business in terms of exit strategy that you just sell to someone else. You are the artist, so you can't really, I guess you could sell a clone of yourself or something, but you could, I guess, people are starting to sell their their royalties and their IP and stuff like that. But if we've only put everything back into the business, I've known many people who end up having nothing to show for it because they didn't take care of their personal. Anyway, a conversation for another day, but thank you so much, Austin. This was fantastic.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Spencer. And I agree with you. We could probably go on that conversation a lot, but it's one of the same. A lot of people try and separate the two, but especially early on in any business, creative or not, how you manage your personal finances and your credit is pretty indicative of how you would manage the business. Not all the time. I've known some people, I'm one of them, screwed it up real early, fixed it, and managed it a lot better. But a lot of times, if you get people that are a little further along in their life and they're still not able to manage the money, it's going to affect the business. It affects the ability to get the credit in the first place. Long term, like you said, if you're bringing all this money in, it's just constantly, being reallocated to the business, which makes sense at startup. But as you start growing, if you're not starting to think about strategies on how to bring some of that back out as the ownership and reap some of the benefits, and then put that into something that isn't so dependent on your health, your mental health, all of it, any one of those things goes wrong, your music career is done, and so is your income. So I think people like you are so important to help guide people that way, because a lot of times there's no room to go get a line of credit for business, which is a lifeline for most working musicians, because cash flow is so atrocious in our industry as far as how royalties pay. If you're so up to your eyeballs in debt on the personal side, there's no debt pay down plan. There's no financial institution in the world, whether your music is on the level of Taylor Swift or not, that's going to give you any sort of credit if that's not. Yep. And I think a lot of people don't know that. Again, you don't know what you don't know until you walk into the bank and had the embarrassing conversation about how you didn't get proof. Right. And so I think people like us and people like yourself can help guide those people and say, hey, here's how you navigate this maze that is your financial life, to help you be more successful. But anyway, yes, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to partnering with you. I'm looking forward to meeting as many people as we possibly can. I mean, it's for us, it's a culmination of 15 plus years of a lot of trial and error for us too, right? I mean, not every venture we've done has been successful, and but I think everything we've learned along the way, and as everything musicians learn along the way, happens for a reason. And how you leverage that, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move forward, separates who ends up being successful and who doesn't.
Absolutely. If you found this insightful or helpful, feel free to share with another thriving musician, or better yet, leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I hope you all have a great day. Keep thriving.
Want more ideas, tools, and resources on how to achieve financial independence? Visit motifplanning.com. Read the leading financial blog for music professionals, sign up for the financial literacy newsletter, and keep thriving.